Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning, yes, from Abuja here. It's a bit cloudy. I'm Maupe Yusuf.
Well, it's not that cloudy here in Lagos. We're hoping it will stay dry today. You're welcome to the program. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
But you have to check the weather forecast. Amaya Makinde, good morning and welcome.
You know, quite a number of things happening, guys. I mean, well, you know, before now we've been speaking about the challenge that what we see playing out in Abuja as a result of the flooding in different parts of the country, how fuel supply is taking a hit. But I understand now that some parts of Lagos as well, you may need to look out for that, because who knows if that is what is affecting or producing or causing those queues that are beginning to pop up in Lagos. But yesterday, we also did talk about how imperative it was for the president to at least be seen and heard saying something about flooding. But the president eventually, well, there's a statement that came through. Well, calm down. The presidential spokesman, Mr. Garba Shehu, did issue a statement saying the president has given the Minister of Water Resources to coordinate to their humanitarian and environmental counterparts. They have 90 days to come up with a plan. Okay, because yes, I had to look at that twice. And it says here that yes, they are to develop a comprehensive plan of action for preventing flood disaster in Nigeria. And the president is said to be receiving regular updates, and we'll have nothing to worry about because those updates are coming on a regular basis. But, well, guys, did we ask for it? Even though you'd have thought, yeah, you see perhaps way quicker, shorter directive or timeline for them to come up with this plan, because if it's going to be 90 days, you're looking at sometime in maybe like January 23rd or 24th, not forgetting that the month after that is election year. So at that point, I just wonder how all of this will be, because it just leaves us wondering, oh dear, why 90 days though?
Are you asking me, Chamberlain? Let's seek audience with the president and ask him what he has in mind when he's giving them 90 days to come up with a plan. I'm looking at this statement, and he says the president has directed the Minister of Water Resources to lead and coordinate with the Ministries of Environment and Transportation, as well as state governments, to develop a comprehensive plan of action for preventing flood disaster in Nigeria. So this is a futuristic thing, I think. This is not something to address what we're currently facing. This is something for them to come up with, I believe, in future, you know, but I think that what people wanted the president to speak on, and I think they missed bullseye on this one, is to address what is going to happen in this situation. We have a disaster on our hands. A number of states have been affected. What am I even saying? Lives have been lost. Yeah. Properties of people are underwater. As we speak, a lot of communities are living in internally displaced persons camp. Investment of rice farmers and many other types of farmers are underwater as we speak. This could also affect our, food supply. We see NLNG declaring force majeure. They don't know how much longer they're going to be shut in for. They predict maybe between 2 to 3 weeks there will be normalization. We understand that Cotton Karfe has since dried. The water along Cotton Karfe has since receded somewhat, and there should be some movement. As we speak, there is still fuel scarcity in the Federal Capital Territory, which we understand is beginning to creep to Lagos and a number of other states. So what is going on? What is the matter in that regard? Is it still about the floods? There needs to be a coordinated attempt to, understand what is going on now, and, for people to be given a blow-by-blow account to not just the president, and also a briefing to the Nigerian people to say, We've done an assessment of the entire situation. We're speaking with the state governments involved. This is the plan we have for the people who are currently displaced. This is how we hope that we'll be able to get people back on their feet after this flood. This is how we hope to be able to prevent diseases. It was you and I who read yesterday that the NCDC has talked about how cholera is beginning to claim lives. Yeah. This is how we hope that this is what we hope to hear, Chamberlain. Yes, we can now begin, after we have handled this disaster in front of us, face the catastrophe in front of us, we can then begin to sit and plan and say, okay, for the future, to prevent such a thing from happening again, this is now what we hope to do. We give you people this much time to come up with a plan. But this directive, this statement does not address the current disaster and the current catastrophe that people who are now stuck in IDP camps are currently facing. I'm sorry, Chamberlain, it does fall short.
Yeah, maybe, who knows, if because from there, one can then deduce that the thinking of the government could be that, well, what needs to be done probably is being done, and so let's look at the future. But then...
The thinking of government is that what needs to be done is being done.
If they didn't see any reason why they should, this statement ordinarily, just as you highlighted, should perhaps the comments that came through from the Minister of Water Resources while they appeared before the congressmen, perhaps...
That Agro dam was only 20% of the problems.
And then it says it was man-made. Then the activities from what? NEMA. Could the government be thinking that those actions are addressing this challenge, and as such, let's have a coordinated one for the future? Who knows? So there's so many...
The people who feel it know it, Chamberlain. The people who are wearing the shoes know it. That's the thing. If we're beginning to see statistics from the NCDC saying that people are losing their lives to cholera, those people who have lost their lives and their family members know it, that it's not quite addressing it. Those of us who are just watching, I mean, you and I, right now, struggling to see how we can get fuel in the Federal Capital Territory, we know it. So I don't know who else needs to know it in order to say, look, whatever government is doing, people are not feeling it. We're not even getting the communication, the empathy. We saw a letter all the way from the United Kingdom, the King of the United Kingdom, sending a letter to empathize. I do not know if we have heard the President visit or empathize with communities that have been affected by this flood. Chamberlain, look, there's so many, there's just, I don't know, maybe Ayo and Kayode might have a different perspective to this.
You know, there are many questions to ask. Perhaps before we even talk about this so-called comprehensive plan that the President is thinking about, how about we look at the things that we have not done until now? I understand that there were some dams that ought to have been built to receive the water from Cameroon, for one. Have we done what we're supposed to do about that? Then the President attends COP every time, the climate change conferences. So what have been the results, and what kind of collaborations should be happening? Those things, are they happening? Now we have a 90-day plan. I've calculated it.
Well, the plan is meant to come up in 90 days.
The plan will come up in 90 days.
Should come up.
By which time it will be dry season. And then, so what is going to happen then? What are we doing now? Malpoy is spot on by asking, the people who are feeling it now, how are they going to recover?
Yeah.
One of the questions we've asked over and over again, what happens to those communities that are flooded right now? Who is doing anything about that? I expect that the people who advise the President, even if the President is not able to see these things, I expect that those people should be able to call his attention to these things and say, Mr. President, this is happening right now. There's a community in Lokoja. We had this conversation on Saturday. The Commissioner for the Environment said that there is a particular community in Lokoja, in Kogi State, that is underwater as we speak. Who is empathizing? Who is looking at what we can do to ensure that these people don't record these losses permanently? Future is fine, but how about now?
And I think that's like an age-long challenge of governance and policies of government. It's usually very difficult for the government to make decisive or take decisive steps when it is not really threatened directly. And I'll go back to COVID period. You recall COVID period, right? I mean, we had just recorded few cases. We had just recorded maybe first death or thereabout, and you see how we actually shut down the whole nation. Why? Because it was clear that nobody was safe from COVID. And it looks like the high and in fact, it looked like even the high and mighty were more at risk, because you saw videos of people, you know, people in rural areas saying we don't even know what COVID is, what is COVID about. But when it looked like the high and mighty, in quotes, the elites, those at high levels of governance were affected, you saw how things moved. You saw how funds rolled out. You saw you saw how things were marshaled. A state of emergency was declared. And now we're looking at flooding. If we were to put a figure to it, we'd say 600 dead, really, from flooding, and millions infected because they are affected, right? A lot of people are displaced. So if we were to relate that with COVID, that is what we have on our hands. But the minister said it's not time to declare a state of emergency because it's not a nationwide emergency yet. And you get a sense. Now, this is Kogi. I see how, trucks, these are trucks that have been stuck on the road, and they're actually moving goods here and there. So imagine how millions will have been affected. And this is not the one you see on the records of NEMA and all of that. So you get a sense of how government thinks. For what we know, at least what we're sure of, the future you might benefit from this plan, right? That's in the coming year. But the present you, people affected by flood, and I will say this again, I think it's because a lot of people in government are not really affected, really. They can afford to maybe move away from house A, which might be threatened by flood, to house B, house C, or they're not even experiencing floods at all because they live in the most cherished and highbrow areas. High on 2 levels now. So I think empathy is the word this morning. The fact that you're not affected by it directly, either as government or someone in power, does not mean you should not be able to relate with the people who are directly affected. That is the essence of governance.
All right, well, we'll just come back to you with a look at some of the dailies in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's take a look at some of the dailies, and we'll start off with New Telegraph, because speaking about flooding, guys, look at what New Telegraph leads with. Unprecedented flooding. NIMET blames states for calamity. So there you go. Says weather forecast gave an inkling. And, you see these kind of headlines, assuming one was affected, and of course you have every reason to be concerned because those affected are in the same country with us, and you just wonder, so how does this, help with what is currently being faced, what they're going through?
Chemeling, sometimes though, one needs to say, you need to put the blame fairly where it belongs. NIMET did its work. It talked about the flooding, and oftentimes when they come up with this forecast, we usually ask them whether farmers have been informed about the flooding, and they'll say yes, that they're collaborating with state governments to alert farmers and individuals about this, and they're hoping that state governments will clear drainages. If you speak to the state government, you've heard NIMET's warning. What are you doing about it? Oh, we are doing something about it. We're clearing drainages. But then, we see this, and, it appears that nothing really was being done.
Well,
We'll hear them much later, the testimony of farmers and what they really thought about the warning that NIMET gave, because according to them, they did hear it, but they thought that it was not going, that this warning comes almost every year. So nobody expected this deluge that we have seen this year. They didn't know it was going to be this bad.
There are several things about that warning and the blame, because number one is that the states themselves don't quite agree that it was the rains that caused that flooding to that extent, as they say, because I mean, some of them just say that no, that there is a dam problem that we have, which if we had those dams, all of this rains notwithstanding, would have been able to channel the water in a controlled measure, and we won't have this kind of damage. So that's why sometimes we just wonder what you make of this kind of statements and headlines from NIMET. And besides, when NIMET gives its headings, they don't actually what's the word? Because like those farmers say, it comes to them like a normal, regular warning. If you say this amount of rain, so what is the implication? What will the likely level of water be? Why do I need to move? And things like that. It's a regular directive from states, move to high ground. Why should I move to high ground? How long will I be on the high ground? At what points do I move to high ground? What is the alert level of the flood? What capacity of flood? So they don't have all those things. So you just can't give them a blanket directive, oh, rain is coming, move to high ground. Generic warning. Well, would you do that? So sometimes, that's why in some countries they give you exactly precision in terms of what to do, but it is what it is here. And then it's Lagos issues red alerts to Ikoyi VI Lekki residents. So maybe you need to read it and find out what this red alert means. Should they also move to high ground? Should they vacate those areas? We need solution, not relief materials. Hosts come.
That one will be the rich also cry.
Okay, so as host community.
When Ikoyi finally goes underwater.
There you go. Our president should visit our states. Bayelsa Elders Council. Produce food curtailment plan in 90 days. Buhari orders minister. So, I think I'll leave that because these political stories, you find them in some of the other papers. So that is New Telegraph this morning.
Well, let's take a look at what The Guardian has for you. I'm a little partial to this one. Look at this. 2023, women threaten boycotts to engage Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, others.
Oh, dear.
Don't dare them, don't, please. Just, when they issue their threats, just take it as it is. But that's what you're seeing there. 2023, women threaten boycott to engage Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, others. Akiode Afolabi, we don't know presidential candidates' plans for women. Advocacy group tasks Tinubu, Atiku, others on gender balance. Nigeria will break up if APC wins, says Obaseki. That's what he says. Wike, Atiku disrespected, sidelined me to assemble his campaign list. Group faults Wike on exclusion of his group from Atiku. So we saw a lot of that yesterday coming from the River State Governor. Page 6 is where you'll see details. Look at this. Steady rise in Ogun River at Long Bridge yesterday. Lagos has warned of likely overflow. So to be forewarned, again, is to be forearmed. So please, let's be on the alert. You also see there people living with disabilities during a rally commemorating 2022 World International Polio Day organized by Rotary District in collaboration with the Kaduna Ministry of Health yesterday. That's also on the front page as well. So it does look like they had their day. And look at this, federal government, why we don't want Kanu released. It's a page 6 read that is also there. Terror alert, experts urge federal government to tighten security around soft targets. As a result of the alerts issued, the number of schools in Abuja are now on midterm break. Maybe they were about to take their midterm break before that. We didn't know, but for 1 week, the students are going to be at home. Pupils, as a matter of fact, will be at home just to be sure that...
Just keep doing the same things and expect different results.
I don't know. This also broke yesterday. Sunak to become first British Asian Prime Minister. It's a page 3 read for you. And that's where we'll leave it for the Guardian newspapers.
We'll take a look at leadership next with this one. Finally, Atiku, Wike reconciliation collapses. You think this was anticipated? Like, finally, it has happened. Take a look at the riders, perhaps gives more insight. The Rivers governor says he won't campaign for ex-VP, nominates Amechi loyalists, 16 others as commissioners. Atiku suspends campaign, visits states ravaged by flood today. Again, Tinubu hits PDP flag bearer, accuses him of plagiarizing PMB's agenda. So that's what you find. It's a big one on the front page of a leadership newspaper. Let me just pick some others for you. Security alert. Police launch Operation Derking Gagawa in Abuja. Wonder what that means. Inside pages should have more details. And this one, it's on the economy. 1/3 of global economy in recession. That's coming from the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Governor Emefiele. So understand the context, really, maybe how it impacts Nigeria, what we can do, what we're doing different, maybe. Perhaps you find out. And just for mention yet again, excitement in India as Rishi Sunak becomes UK Prime Minister. It's interesting now, the world is a global village now. I mean, one thing is happening in one country, the celebration is taking place in another country. And then you see other countries by extension. You see you, Nigeria, say, yeah, they're Indian brothers.
Hey,
yeah.
they're just going to tell you, it happened in the US.
Yeah.
Kenyan became president of the US.
Can that happen in Nigeria, though?
All things are possible. After all, we've had commissioners of Southeast extraction.
No, I mean someone from, you know, maybe another nationality mixed.
No, let's start with somebody from a different region being governor in another region. Let's start from there.
That's the leadership newspaper for you this morning.
And flip to this Nigeria newspaper. It's a little shocking what you will find on its front page this morning, and one would have thought, why? But look at it on the front page of this Nigeria newspaper today. NAS can't stop corruption, economic sabotage. That's coming from the chairman of the National Assembly and the president of the Senate. Stories on page 5. Ex-Speaker Bankole laments 99% yearly budget encourages looting. That's a write-up to that story. Find the details on the inside pages. Of course, you see PM Sunak's picture on the front page, and there's a question: how soon can he get UK out of the arc of economic crisis? Find the details on the inside pages. Look at that story right under that picture. NMA laments brain drain syndrome, claims 10,296 Nigerian doctors serving in UK. Okay, well, that story is on page 9. And we say we have enough. I mean, I still recall that that interview we had with the Minister of...
That was then. Things have changed.
Oh,
you know, there's been more, you know, so we need to get an update.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to invite him for another one. Okay. Anyway, this last one, FG criticizes unregulated use of social media. Well, the story is on page 4. You may want to read it to be clear exactly what government is saying right there. That's this Nigeria newspaper this morning.
Okay, take a look at what? Do we have Daily Trust of Vanguard? Which should we go for now? All right, let's try Daily Trust, guys. Troops nab Boko Haram kingpins in Abuja and Kano. Tight security at government offices in satellite towns. Residents ask government to be proactive. FCTA orders CCTV in public places. Police launch counter-terrorism exercise. Okay, there you go. That's what you see right here now. Yeah, about that, Rishi Sunak takes over as British Prime Minister today. And when you see all this kind of headlines, you just wonder, well, are we still part of this same global village? They say the world is a global village. So in terms of politically speaking, are we still part of it? Because when you look to see these kinds of scenario play out here, but your guess is as good as mine.
Every politics is local, Chamberlain.
That's what they always tell us.
But sometimes part of a global village, but all politics are local.
Yes, then they come on the show, they'll tell us, no, in that country, in this country, this is what happens, then we could... They pick and choose which examples to use as suits them, but not the one that get them out of seats. All those resignations that happen in this country, they don't see it, they never mention it. But, you know how these things play out. Well, that is Daily Trust this morning, guys.
And let's take a look at Vanguard for you. And this is what we see on the front page. Biafra, why we won't release Kano, federal government tells appeal court. So there was supposed to be, I don't know, flip to page 9 for the story, lest I misrepresent it. But don't forget that the appeal court has said that he should be released. The federal government said, oh, he's been discharged, but not acquitted, and that they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court. So I think that matter was being heard yesterday. Insists he's a threat to national security as court reserves ruling on request to stay execution of judgment. So that story is on page 9 for you. Biafra, why we won't release Kano, federal government tells appeal court. It's not the first time. Don't forget that when former NSA, trying to remember his name now,
Sambo Dasuki?
Sambo Dasuki was also released by the court. The federal government said he was a threat to national security and held him for at least another 3 to 4 years thereabout before he was eventually released.
Oh, can the government afford any of such scenarios again? Because remember how they were on the neck of ASU saying, obey court order, obey court order.
Oh, exactly. So
let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens on this one and what the defense will be. But that's what you find on the front page here. Rivers PDP won't campaign for you, Wike tells Atiku. It's a page 5 read. You already saw one of the dailies that finally this peace plan has collapsed.
Oh dear.
This looks definitive now. And look also here, Nigeria will break up if APC wins, says Obaseki. We've seen that story also. They have it for you inside the Guardian. And look at this, how we prevented flight suspension by Emefiele. My plan to fix flooding if elected President Peter Obi is also speaking. And let's see what else. Your Mr. and Mrs. is also on the...
What?
It's also on the front page.
Oh yeah, it looks interesting.
And
watch out, watch
out. And Mr. is asking Mrs. Cynthia, what kind of soup is this? It looks like the Red Sea. And Mrs. retorts, that shouldn't be a problem. After all, your name is Moses. Just leave it there. Just leave it there for Vanguard newspapers. Moses should have no problem with the Red Sea.
After all, it is the season of flooding these days.
He should be patting it. Once the party with the stone, good for him.
Oh dear, guys.
Right, I mean, you can tell who loves soup this morning with the kind of laugh that is coming out. And this kind of Moses is parting it with muscles, not a slack. Take a look at Nigeria News Direct next. Well, it talks about flood, and I'll have to wipe that smile off my face, really, because this is the situation of lots of Nigerians. 2022 floods. Nigeria faces food, fuel scarcity over bad roads, submerged farms. That's according to stakeholders. So this is just on different levels, really. Lots of you see, farmers' displacement will spike inflation, AFAN, bad roads, fuel scarcity to hike food prices, fuel scarcity, NATO. Just a lot, really. I'll just mention this one. We'll review U.S. security advisory, strengthen structures for proactiveness. That's coming from the Force PRO. That's coming after that advisory issued by the United States. And I recall the DSS putting out a statement saying it had also released some sort of advisory. But over time, we see that, I mean, those advisories were way back in the past. So you wonder just how this is being received. And more importantly, how we're handling this situation on our hands. A couple of other stories on the front page of Nigeria News Direct. But let's just leave it there for the paper this morning.
Daily Times, very quickly, is talking about, of course, something we've raised from the front page of other papers this morning. 2023, Nigeria will break up if APC wins, ascribed to the governor of Edo State, says nobody has done the kind of damages APC has done in Nigeria. Supporters of ex-Anambra governor will soon run out of steam. The details of that you'll find right above the nameplate. Flood prevention. Buhari gives minister 90 days to produce plan. We spoke about that earlier. I don't think there's any need to. But look at the picture. Beside that picture is one statement. 1/3 of world economy in recession. That's ascribed to the governor of central bank. What you make of that? You want to get the details on the front page of, well, the story itself is on page 2 of the paper this morning. And that ends a look at the papers today. We're back after now to begin
deal with the issues for the day. Do stay with us.
What you see here is a trickle of what we produced in the last wet season.
Massive rice pyramids unveiled in January as payback of loans rice farmers borrowed to expand their production. The federal government claimed that rice production has increased to over 7.5 million metric tons yearly, from less than 4 million metric tons recorded in 2015, prior to the introduction of Anchor Borrowers Program. The low-interest loans had helped the farmers to more than double their average yield of rice, fighting armed herders on their way to success. And so during this year's planting season, they were more than happy to plant. None of them expected a deadly flood. Since August, more than 270 kilometers of cropland along the Benue and Niger rivers have been flooded. Every farmland within about 3 kilometers on each side of the riverbanks inundated.
You are all right. Look at it.
We stopped at the farm of 30-year-old father of 7, Umar in Opakabi, outside the town of Loko in Nasarawa State. He's one of thousands of smallholder farmers who benefited from the Anchor Borrowers Program and contributed to the rice pyramid as a member of the Rice Farmers Association. He has not only lost all the seeds planted, he has no idea how he will repay his 200,000 naira debt. Jubrin is one of the leaders of the farmers' cooperative societies in Okpakabi. Is owing 500,000 naira. To repay their loans, every individual in Jubrin's 25-member cooperative society is expected to contribute 1,850 kilograms bags of rice paddy for the duration of the loan. They were all hoping to complete repayment during the next harvest season. Although they have been blamed for not heeding the flood warnings, the farmers argue the warnings came after planting. More so, 46-year-old Jubrin says this flooding is uncommon.
Even last year, they told us that the water is going to be too much, overflowing. And last year, we ride machine, look at the road. Even the car passing this place. Even me, we are ride machine from here down to local, down to the during Hamatan. So we didn't believe on that until this thing that happened to us this year. Even I told you that since I was born, only 2012 that I experienced it. If not, water never covered these villages.
Those that stay behind hope to make ends meet by fishing. And across the river from Loko in Nasarawa State to Agatu in Benue State, the story is not different. Smallholder farmers camping on riverbanks, praying that the water will recede. They are joined in this prayer by some other richer farmers. Organizing Secretary of Rice Farmers Association of Nigeria, Sam Yua, is one of those. He has 19.34 hectares of rice farm on the water in Makurdi.
The rice was coming up fine. Then suddenly this deluge came. It's not been easy. I saw the rice just submerging gradually until everything is underwater. The rice seeds I use actually are Faro 67. They are supposed to be flood-tolerant variety, but the tolerance is only for 2 weeks. We are talking about 8 weeks now. Definitely what is underwater can no longer be alive.
Across town, the Benue State Commissioner for Rural Development, whose investment was funded by Bank of Industry, is threatening to sue the federal government for losses he has incurred.
I'm going to court. Let the court say, Victor, you don't have a case. We cannot allow things to happen the way they happen in this nation. For once, we need to sit up. And if there are ways that we can push our authorities in this country to sit up and do what they need to do, then we need to do that.
Back on the road and more than 5 hours drive from Benue to Nasarawa State, we arrived Tunga. Farmers here do not have what it takes to sue the federal government. They can only plead.
Padashine.
Really, government did not come to our rescue. Some of these banks will come and arrest our people here because we collected loan from them and there is no way of paying them back. So we were hoping government to come to our rescue so that the government will assist us in solving some of these problems. My real farm, our real farm here, maize farm, about 4 to 5 hectares of maize farm that has been submerged by flood.
The people here have completely lost all they have. Unfortunately, farming in Nigeria is a tedious task, and for the last 2 years, these farmers have not been having it good. They've barely survived the impact of COVID-19 on sales of their produce. They battled with herders to save their crops, only to lose it to floods. The fact is, if they do not get the help they need, not only will they fall into extreme poverty, everyone who depend on their produce for supply face scarcity and price increases. And these simply means more people will face extreme hunger across the country. From Tunga community in Nasarawa State, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
All right, welcome back. So in context of that challenge, the federal government alongside the AFDB and some partners did launch a $520 million special agro-industrial processing zones. That program, there will be 7 states and the FCT that will feature in the first tranche of that. So to shed light on that and possible implications of what you just heard about the states who are going through challenges, farmers with flooding in different parts of the country. We've got Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeyinka, who is the Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the AFDB. He joins us virtually. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, but before, talking about this program, we just that report which we just heard and played, how farmers in different parts of the country are affected. Well, you know, before this flood, of course, there was a huge optimism, and there still is, by the way, concerning this launch of this special program, this agri program. But having seen the flood, you have those who will ask questions saying, oh, wait a minute, what do we then do? How is this program going to stand in the face of this kind of scenario, this flooding that just occurred, that may occur tomorrow? Well, I know you also have factored all that in. So what would your thoughts be on how this will play out in the light of what's going on today?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Our sympathies go to all those families affected. But as you know, flooding is a natural phenomena, of course, preventable with technology, with all manner of other precautions that we need to take as societies. I believe, as it happened, for example, in 2012, when Dr. Additional was the Minister of Agriculture, remember we had very severe flooding in 2012. And many people were predicting very apocalyptic scenarios that, you know, there's going to be food shortage, crisis, and all of that. But using technology and science, at that time, the country was able to turn this around. And that was when the dry season farming was started, using exactly the receding flood that leaves a lot of alluvial on the ground. and also to use science. Now, as we speak, most of the time when things like this happen, there's a tendency for people to panic, which is understandable, especially those who are affected. But what we need to do now is actually to establish exactly how much of our farmland are affected, how much of the communities are affected, how much of the crops that have been planted have been destroyed. By the time you use precise measurement, it might be surprising to you. I don't know the facts for sure, that if we have those facts on our hands, we may panic less than we are doing now. As I said earlier, nobody wants any of these natural disasters. It's all over the world. But we need to use technology and science to mitigate the impact on our people and to ensure that we don't leave people to their own sufferings.
Now, about this special agro-industrial processing zones that's going to be launched. And yes, we know that states, even though you shed light on that as we proceed, states have a huge role to play here. But then we also see that the state and the government, the federal government as a matter of fact, now haven't seen how they're responding to this flooding scenario. You equally will have questions concerning their capacity to manage this kind of scenario. Because yes, you suggested, yeah, we have to deploy science, technology, and several others, policies and the likes. But looking at this response, are you concerned that this might cause or raise more questions on those members of the private sector who may want to invest in it? Because if they put in a huge amount of money, even your partners, if they put in a huge amount of money, they want to see a coordinated and better response. Will this be a source of concern to them, saying, look, if this happens, if this is how they will respond, maybe we'll need to do more?
No, I agree with you, Chamberlain. Look, the way society is designed is such that you have to mitigate risk. You have to put in place risk measures that will also anticipate these kinds of things. For the special agro-industrial processing zones, for example, as you said, and if I read between the lines, you are speaking about the capacity of the state.
Yes.
I'm talking of government to deal with issues. You and I know that, most developing countries like ours have not so much capacity. It's measured in terms of fragility of countries and all of that. We rank extremely very low. Yesterday, during the presentation, we launched this yesterday actually, it's continuing today. As you can see, in terms of the Global Hunger Index, we are ranking extremely very low. So it speaks to the capacity of the state for service delivery. But I don't want us to focus too much on that negativity. It's actually very depressing that a country like ours will be featuring so low on nutrition and food security. We should not be where we are. That's clear to me. But it shouldn't stop us also from action. And I want to thank you and your colleagues. We've been together on this journey for the last 3 years. I know in the beginning that, you used to grill me a lot on how this will happen. And I know that you had always been, but, what I want to show you now is that the model we chose, because we factored all this in. As a matter of fact, when I was briefed to be part of all of this, we took very strong steps to ensure that we don't end up like other projects. And it is bearing fruit. I can tell you as we speak, now that after drumming the message into all of our partners, states, governors, and everybody, that the message is sinking. For example, in Ogun State now, they are going to do groundbreaking of their own special agro-industrial processing zone, and it's almost 100% private sector finance. And I know for sure that there are other states that are already lining up to do exactly the same. Why? Because we got the theory right, we got the policy right, and then the practice will be right. So to speak to exactly what you're asking me, yes, we were very careful. That's why it took us so long because we know that there is weak state capacity. There is difficulty, for example, in the bureaucratic management of big complex projects. So we were not going to fall into that trap. I am not saying it is a foolproof model that we are using, but we have taken extreme care to ensure that we don't go the way others have gone. So I really want to, so for all our all our viewers and those who are watching, I want to assure you that what we have done in these last 3 years is beginning to bear fruit.
Well, $520 million, that certainly is a lot of money, and a pretty bold one at that, considering the fact that you're planning to launch this in rural communities. If I'm reading this right, the economic zones are going to be located in rural areas. How is this going to work, given the fact that, rural areas are oftentimes challenged with infrastructure, access roads, electricity, etc.? If this is going to be a processing zone, how are these matters of infrastructure also being taken into consideration?
No, thank you so much. Actually, the special agro-industrial process is a response to that. It's a response to the fact that peri-urban areas have very weak infrastructure. It is populated by very unskilled, mostly farmers. 70% of our smallholder farmers are based in that zone. And we have targeted the special agro-industrial processing zone to solve that problem. The world look at Africa in a different way. We want to look at it in a different way. When you describe Africa, you talk about, a dual structural economies, poor people, unskilled people in the rural areas. Our role is to change that narrative. We want to ensure that in the next 10 years, those areas you call peri-urban areas is totally transformed. The normal, or what you might call the conventional special economic zones, are usually located maybe somewhere close to a port or a seaport. So you import the inputs, intermediate inputs. For example, if you are doing a textile plant, you import the yarn and all of that, and then you turn it into ready-made garments and you export out. What we are doing in a very deliberate way is that we are targeting in those 8 states, and by the way, there will be 18 other states lining up, targeted policy to induce a structural transformation of those areas. It is one thing we've been stuck with this for the last 40 years. We don't want to do palliatives. This is a fundamental change in the philosophy of development. It is deliberate that we are putting it there. So the weaknesses you described in those peri-urban areas is what we want to solve: power, roads, irrigation, all of that. So what do? We have 2 sides to the SAPZs, as we call it. There is that fundamental part of production, agricultural production. The small communities, small farming communities, we are going to build in those areas with this money you are describing, what we call agri-transformation centers. Those are areas where you put warehouses, storage, dryers, because one of the biggest problems of farmers is post-harvest losses. So we want to mitigate that. And also connect those ATCs, agri-transfer, to the main hub. The hub is now where you have the factories. As I speak to you, for example, the case of this state I was mentioning, they already have almost 20-something companies already lining up. And we expect that this is going to happen. So in the main hub, you now breach that divide because we have a huge divide. The society is divided: rural, urban, poor, rich, all of that. The idea of the SAPZ is that with roads, with transportation, with logistics, we will bridge that gap between those smallholder communities, poor folks who have on their own cannot do this by themselves. We want to help them create communities that can react and then to prosper. In fact, as we always describe it, zones of misery, we want to turn them to zones of prosperity. That is the aim. That is the goal. And we hope that in the next 10 years, as the Vice President eloquently described it yesterday, we will have dealt a huge blow to poverty in those communities.
And we cannot help but hope along with you, because we do know that if this plan works out, I mean, it has the capacity to truly transform our rural areas. And maybe we could be seeing an urban-rural migration this time around instead of a rural-urban migration, which is what we've witnessed over the years. However, you know, even while we try to be hopeful, we still cannot but help look at the situation we have found ourselves in, especially in rural communities down south, south of the River Niger and south of the River Benue. A lot of companies and smallholder farmers who have put in quite a lot of hope into their investment in agriculture this year might be holding the short end of the stick when harvest comes in. Have you also been able to think about scenarios like this in terms of where this SAPZs are going to be sited and perhaps how, you know, this sort of risks can be mitigated?
No, thank you, Mokwe. I think, yes. You know, one of the reasons why we took so long is that bank-funded projects, and I'm not talking about AFDB alone, all the other partners also have the same processes. You have to do environmental studies. You have to have clear environmental impact assessment. You have to have feasibility studies that shows that the location that you have chosen, the commodities that you are targeting, they can stand the test of sustainability over time. So yes, indeed, we have actually taken all of this into account. Of course, you cannot predict the future all the time. The conflicts we are having all over the world now is largely also caused by climate change. It's caused by human-made issues, farming practices that are not sustainable, cutting down trees and all of that. Again, also as a result of poverty. When people don't have gas to cook, they don't have whatever to deal with their lives, they resort to all manner of things. Yes, so to answer your question directly, we have done very extensive, we call it SCF, environmental and social impact assessment, and also taking account of the possibilities of all these kinds of things. So the locations where you're going to have the SAPZs, they provide those zones of comfort for people to produce. And I know people also ask me about security. Much of the time, zones are actually fenced around, you know, in terms of, and of course, given the peculiarity of what we have found ourselves in terms of security in Nigeria, we are going to also be taking mitigating steps also to ensure that even the adjoining communities, as you have seen in some communities now in Nigeria, where they have rangers or something as they call them, to ensure that people can go about their lives without threat of being killed and all of that. But our hope is that these things will be a thing of the past, and that we can actually live our lives, these communities, in peace. But yes, we have taken account of the location. They were deliberately chosen by each state. The commodities were deliberately chosen. And in fact, in cases where there was, we had all kinds of conversations around, no, you cannot be here, you sure have to be here because of so and so. A lot of expertise, knowledge, experiences have actually gone into determining the locations and the communities and the commodities.
I think that leads straight away, Prof, into my question around insurance. Because as you said, no one ever foresaw this quantum of flooding all over the nation. This program was supposed to be launched in February, and 9 months after, here we are.
I can't hear you, Ayo.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I said, no one ever foresaw the quantum of flooding that we have now in our hands compared to 9 months ago when the SAPZ was supposed to have been launched. But so no one ever knew that the kind of flooding that is happening right now would happen. But here we are. And you said, even though those places have been carefully selected, You also mentioned that no one can really predict, the climate, what's going to happen and all of that. Is there any kind of insurance programs to insulate people's investments? Because as you said, it's government-enabled, private sector-led. So is there any kind of insurance programs that can insulate people's investments?
Yes, so there are several phases to this project. Where we are now, we have chosen locations based on, as I said earlier, on very clear technical criteria. Then you move on to a situation now where you have to choose the zone builders, those who will construct the zones. And many states are already going through that on that pathway. And then you now need to also attract zone tenants, people who will be the operators, both on the production side and the processing side. So, and then you have a facility manager. So across all of that chain of activities, one will expect that big businesses, you are going to be insuring your business. For example, for smallholders, yes, we have put in place insurance risk. We are working with NASAL for such an insurance. For the bigger players, of course, they will also ensure that they insure their businesses. So, but, as I said earlier, one of the things we did with the environmental and social impact assessment and the feasibility is to choose those locations very carefully to ensure that these kinds of things do not really affect those kinds of communities that we are targeting. But of course, like I said, there's one thing to close out the hubs. The hubs are usually at the center. You have to adjoin also to all the farming communities within 50 kilometers, 20, 70 kilometers. So things can happen. But what we have learned in history is that, you have to use knowledge, science, technology to ensure that you mitigate those risks by building dams, by ensuring that you build proper, properly channeling rains and stuff to ensure that you don't destroy investments. So beyond the risk and the monetary fiduciary risk that you want to mitigate, you also want to ensure that you use science and technology, as I said earlier in this program, for prevention. Well, so that's how I can describe that. I'm not sure that I answered your questions fully.
As you said, it's just the start of the conversation. Over time, we'll get better insight into it. But one other question that comes to mind, I don't know if we'll be able to take it before, it's break time, but is this. You said this program is government-enabled, private sector-led. I'd like you to explain that in a way that anyone who wants to get on the program is not afraid that he's going to be frustrated through some government bureaucracy into getting into the program. So how does it work really, such that, just as you said, it is government-enabled, but it is private sector-led. How does that work?
So the government of this, and like I said, we're already in 18 countries. It's not just Nigeria. As you heard Dr. Additional say on his video message yesterday, we are in 18 countries. We've put in close to $1 billion. Now, the funding, the financing is guaranteed by the federal government in the case of Nigeria. But the states are the ones who take these loans, very, concessionary loans. So in that sense, the government of Nigeria has used its leverage and sovereign power to take the loan. Private individuals could also take loans from the bank, for example. But in case of complex big projects like this, the federal government of Nigeria had used its own power to take the loan. And then we designed this model to ensure that it is not being run in a bureaucratic manner. So basically, the framework of the SAPZ is that, yes, the catalytic funding, in fact, that's the best way to describe it. The catalytic funding, the 70 million, 50 million per state that we are giving, is just the seed. So you can see that as the seed funding or the catalytic funding to provide basic infrastructure within the core of the zones, the road, the administrative offices, the customs center. And by the way, it will operate almost like a secondary city on its own. It's going to have its own customs, immigration, where you do your one, and we've seen it work in other areas. And we are going to ensure that it works here. So beyond that now, what we have designed is that the ownership of the zone is, in terms of government ownership, is very limited. I'm not going to mention figures, but like I said to you, for example, in Ogun State, they are willing to even cede almost 100% to the private actor that has come. We have a lot of global players. So those global players will lead the building, the construction. We call it DBO, design, build, and operate, those zones. For the very reason that you have been afraid of, for 3 years, you have been always cracking my head and asking me how it's going to work. So, but as I said, we are seeing it now. So government has enabled it. Government uses power as the biggest shareholder in African Development Bank, as a big shareholder in AFDB and IFAD and all of that, to attract these partners. The AFDB has used its own leveraging power to lead this project. So that's why we call it government enabled. But at the end of the day, the idea of governance is for you to provide the ecosystem for the private sector to operate without trouble. You know, I think ideologically, we've always had a problem in this country. People tend to see the private as an enemy of some kind. And I think it's a very foolish idea, actually. The private sector, they are also Nigerians. They are young people. In fact, how many people can government actually employ? So, but I know that from my interaction on this project, there's a very clear understanding by all the officials we talk about, both at the federal state, that yes, this is the way to go. You know, it's taken a while, but I know now that it is clearly understood that, you know, a government is not designed to be running business.
Right.
The government has so much trouble on its hand already. Look at this
Prof,
model.
if we could break this down.
Look at economy. Look at FX.
Right.
Look at all of this. So, well, how do you run an economy? You are not trained to run a business on a daily basis. So I think this message is very clear.
All right.
So as I said to you, for most governments, the ownership of those zones will be probably less than 20% or even less.
Okay, Prof, if we can break this down even
that's
further.
Why we say it's private sector driven.
Right. If we can break this down even further, because I think participation is key for the various players, smallholders, or even the big players in all of this. So looking at the figures, essentially, I think this conversation is ensuring that the SAPZs, or the SAPZ is essentially easy peasy for people to jump in. That's free of charge to use anyway. So I'm looking at the funds. AFDB providing $210 million. The Islamic Development Bank, IFAD, providing $310 million. I see federal government also $18 million in all of this. And you've talked about the example in Ogun State, that this is essentially even generally private sector. They're providing the funding. So the fund provided by the different banks, what is it going into? Because I imagine someone who wants to participate thinking, oh, would I be able to access these loans? Or essentially, I will use my own funds to do business, and the loan from the AFDB, which is gotten through the federal government, will be used to build infrastructure. So if I want to participate, how do I go about it? Can I access the loans, or I use my money for business, and then the zone is created with the loan you're providing? How does it work, really?
So let me thanks a lot, Hardy. So the loan, this segment by these partners is to provide that basic platform. You know, it's like building an airport, and then you have various airlines coming into the airport. Air this, air that, you know, but you have to provide that platform, the runways, all kinds of things, you know, or you build your Hilton hotel, as I said one day, you know, you have to put all of those infrastructure in place, the hotel, a huge hotel or a huge supermarket with several shops. So what you want to do is to create that ecosystem where the tenants, what we call zone tenants, in this case now, occupants of those shops and stores and all of that in, say, a supermarket, we come in and operate. Now, so the loan we are taking is to build the structure, either the hotel, whether the supermarket, to ensure that you can have occupants in those in that structure. So you can have, say, 50, 20, 30 different zone tenants occupying the zones. So the critical problem, as you have always observed us, that we have in this country is that infrastructure. So the loan itself is going to be used to do that. Provide the rooms, provide the power, let there be running water, 24 hours, let there be security. And then those of you who are interested in operating a factory, you want to produce cassava to turn it to starch, to sorbitol, to fructose, to glucose, you can then come in and rent a shed, a factory built on 1 hectare, for example. So you come in there. So that's where the zone tenants that you are talking about comes in. So you say, how do I get in? Now, so we now have also, Bank of Industry has committed $1 billion more to say, look, for every zone tenant who wants to come into that space to produce, because we know they are guaranteed power, water, security, we are happy to lend them money at also, again, at concessionary rate. There are other players also who actually could have generated their own money from elsewhere, but now they have the comfort to just move into, say, a huge space within that supermarket to simply operate their business. So what we are guaranteeing is that we want to ensure that people can produce and be competitive with their counterparts anywhere in the world. That is the idea of a clustering of actors within a geographic zone. It's an idea that is several decades old. As I've mentioned on this program many times, today, as we speak, Vietnam has close to 380 industrial parks. In Africa here, we have several now already springing up. Even in this country, we have Lekki Free Zone and all of that. So, but in our case, this SAPZ is devoted to processing agri-commodities. That's why we call it Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zone. It is to take agriculture from its primitive phase, where we have been stuck for 40 years, into a modern processing system. It is to ensure that smallholders are cared for, give them good seeds. Seed is the heart of production. Irrigation, fertilizer, mechanization, all of those things that fostered the Green Revolution in Asia almost 40 years ago. So, but as far as we are concerned, it's not too late. What others have done in 30, 40 years, we can do it in the next 10 years because we've learned, we are learning. And it's not that we are starting from ground zero. So this is why the ecosystem of SAPZ tend to take account of almost all of those issues. You know, the connection of small to big holders, the connection of the linkage, logistic linkages of the communities to hubs. So those who will need the loan, those who will need assistance for production, it's a different set of things. So, and we're also assisting with that. In fact, for the small community, we are going to be assisting to put them into cooperative, to associations, and all of that. That's what the IFAD is doing. You're asking me about the different players here. They all have different interests, but everything comes together within the SAPZ. IFAD, for example, they have expertise and experience and interest in helping smallholder farmers. They've done it all over the world. And we are working with them to do that same here. In our case, the major thing is to bring all of these players together into one space. And I want to thank all these partners again for working with us. I want to thank all of you for always coming at me to ask me, how do you do this? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it will be exciting and interesting to see this actually go on, because, I mean, whatever makes the country work and make everything go, we will always support it. And as a matter of fact, this is a flagship program in Africa, as you also have said, and that the mindset is agriculture has got to be seen as a business, as the president of AFDB always says. And so that is a mindset that players in that sector need to have. But we also do know that one of the four broad components of this is coordination and management. So if I could also ask you as we wrap up on this one, what would you say is the key expected output for the first phase of this program on the part of everyone who has participated in this one?
No, so thank you. Now you talked about coordination. So for each state, we have set up what we call a PIU, Project Implementation Unit, and we are funding those units. You have maybe 9, 7 staff members who are chosen in a very competitive way. Some come from private, some come from the civil service, but they were chosen for their competence, who will be oversighting and reporting, and also coordination with the contractors who will build and those who manage. So what we expect is that in the next couple of years, we are going to see these zones all over the country. We are going to see these 8 zones built rapidly in the next 3 years. We are going to see 18 other states also lining up, because now we have learned our lesson. We know we can do this faster to get them to project closure. And then we're going to see a transformed rural areas. We don't want to be described as rural, you know. Yeah, there will always be rural, but you want to be, even if people still want to live in villages, that's to be modern villages. So what we want to create are secondary cities. We want to see high quality living standards among our people. We want to see a situation where even people, as Mokwe was describing, will be moving away from Lagos, Ibadan, Sokoto, the capitals, back to their villages because there's jobs. And by the way, you know, in all of those special zones, there will be clinics, there will be schools, there will be all those service centers that makes life livable for the ordinary citizen.
All right, a very, very fine place to let it go. We look forward to the project taking shape sooner rather than later, and however long it takes. I want to thank you for coming on, Professor Oyebanji Oyelaron Oyeyinka, who is a Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the AFDB. Always a pleasure talking to you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Switching gears now to politics and the coming elections. After all, it is the policies that come out of the politics and the elections that affects you, talking about food, agriculture, flooding, the economy, and all of that. So this is really important. And this morning, we'll be speaking with members of 2 political parties who are in the running to take that #1 seat in the nation. We're joined here in our Lagos studio, as you may have seen, by Mr. Ayo Fadaka, who is a former zonal publicity secretary of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. We'll also be joined by Mr. Shino Fagbero Byron. We'll get to him in a moment, but let's start here in our Lagos studio. Good morning and thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning to you.
Well, just yesterday, Governor Wike spoke yet again, and this time, I mean, as some even reflected it, it says finally it looks like all of the reconciliation efforts and all of that have broken down. And he was quite specific. He spoke about how or why people were not seeing the faces of your presidential candidate, his vice, on all of the campaign materials. And he said that he was disregarded as a governor in the process of selecting members of the campaign council from Rivers State. And from all indications, some might say that it looks like all the efforts have broken down. What do you make of his recent pronouncements?
Well, Governor Wike is somebody I don't always want to talk about when it comes to these party issues. because at times that were very trying for the party, it really stood in gap. And I must say, to a very reasonable extent, that many of us that have been consistent members of this party are not too pleased by what is happening now. And I think we believe that even if there's a crisis in the party, Governor Wike should not be going as far as he's going today. Honestly, I was more or less so surprised when he came to Lagos and to come and endorse the sitting governor in Lagos as against the party's candidate here. That is what is basically called anti-party. And that is coming from someone that has put his essence on the line for the party, someone that has done so much for the party. Look, to an average person who sees and reviews what Governor Wike is doing now, he will be seen as a very sore loser. Because all this is, people will see quickly and very simply conclude that all this is happening because it lost at the presidential primary of the party. For him to say that is disregarded will not be fair coming from him. I particularly know that the presidential candidate of the party, Atiku Abubakar, has met with him not less than 1, 2, 3 times. I also know that committees have been set up to pacify him, to pacify the other governors around him, and they have met not less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. What else is there to be done? How can he, in all honesty, say that he has been disregarded?
But don't forget the issue, one single issue that he's continually repeated is in the interest of justice and all of that, that the presidential candidate cannot come from the same region as the national chairman.
Yes, that seems to be the kernel of the matter. I've always been a member of this party, and I know in this party we have ways of solving crises, and I'm more or less even disappointed too that that process has not been able to put all this out. Above all, you may be agitated for anything within the party, but that does not excuse you putting the interest of the party on the line.
No, he's been very clear. His other parties, even when they came to Ibadan in Oyo State, the governor of the party was very clear. He was unambiguous in making that same declaration that the chairman of the party needed to step down.
Of course, I actually believe in that demand, personally. But again, the new constitution of the party does not in any way make that easy to accomplish now as it used to be in the years gone past. Because before, if the chairman steps down, what we have in the constitution of the party before is that when we have a chairman from a particular zone of the nation, the deputy national chairman was come from the second zone of the nation. But that's no longer the issue. If Senator Yoshiayu steps down today and says he's not going to be chairman, the person that will take over from him is not from the south either. So why do we insist that as we head into this election, that we should take actions that will cause another turmoil in the party and in that way put the plans and the planning of the party at risk?
Mr. Felaka, I don't think that to anyone who is listening, they will be wondering exactly what you're talking about here, because we thought it was no-brainer that the president should take over, the vice president should take over in the event of the death of a president. But that's not what happened, when, late President Yaradua, after his demise, the vice president, they had to come up with some, what they call it now?
The doctrine of necessity.
Doctrine of necessity.
So couldn't there have been a doctrine of necessity of sorts?
It is not impossible to achieve. In this matter...
So is that them putting into question the interest or not of the leadership of the party?
Well, it's a thorny issue really. No matter how anybody wants to dance around that issue, it remains a crisis point in the party. I think what is uppermost for me, because some of those of us that are now ordinary, I'm now an ordinary member of the party, those of us that are ordinary members of the party today, we care more about our nation. We care more about putting the party in place to be able to stand for power effectively and rescue this nation. Nigeria of today has degenerated so much that you can never imagine it. A week or so gone by, former Emir of Kano was telling us that Nigeria now prints currency anyhow. That is to let you know that our economy is in total shambles. The nation is in total shambles. Insecurity too has sitting so deep into the country. Now we have a chance to effect a change in which party and who governs our nation.
But how convincing?
1 minute, please. Yeah. I believe the issue of who holds the chairmanship of the party at this material time remains very ephemeral.
It does?
Yes, it remains ephemeral now to the challenges confronting the nation. When you put it side by side, so the challenges confronting the nation.
So it's like putting together a football team, some would say, and then it's been identified that, well, these are the issues that will weaken the team as against the challenge you're facing the other team. And the team is saying essentially that all you want to do is win the game. You want to win the match without sorting those issues. Some would say Governor Wike, if we're speaking about football, is one of your main strikers, maybe defender, one of your star players.
Saying that.
Exactly. So you're saying that in the interest of the party, issues shield his swords. But he's saying that in the interest of maybe the nation or proper representation, this should be done. So really, can you leave one in place of the other?
Now, who aggregates the interest of the nation? We all see it from our different perspectives.
Isn't that why you had that as a rule, as it were, in the party, that it should be equal representation?
Well, yes, we said there should be equal representation. It is unfortunate that we're in this crisis. I don't ever shy away from that fact. It's absolutely unfortunate. And again, I think I have even written a piece sometimes where I said that, look, Chairman Yoshayu, if you are going to be the stumbling block to the party winning the presidency, why don't you just take a honorable part out of it? It depends again on people. For instance, even I'm the national chairman of the party now, and I see that a crisis of this magnitude is being ignited that can consume the party because of me. Of course, I will simply take a way out to rescue the party. Again, that speaks about a personal appreciation of one's words or even situation at hand. So I think Governor Wike and his team have raised their voice so much on this matter, and they have sympathizers in people like me. And that is the truth of the matter. Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State, for instance, is somebody I'm close to. You understand me? And on this issue, I have attempted to see him on this matter. I've not been lucky. You know?
You said earlier that what Governor Wike is doing amounts to anti-party activities. Is there any...
No, don't isolate it. Don't isolate it. Okay. I said he's coming to Lagos to take a position of supporting a candidate of a rival party. If it can be viewed on another level, will be regarded as being anti-party.
Is there any other level to view it?
Well, maybe you know one.
No, for you. Because another level. Do you have another level to view it? Do you have a dual lens you're looking at this through? But please go ahead.
Well, I'm just asking because, there are those who are wondering, even if indeed that is the position, what then is likely to happen? Because he's not doing this in hiding. He's very vocal, upfront, courageous about it.
Well,
is this something that bothers the national leadership of the party?
I know that Governor Wike and his team are still being spoken to on this matter.
By who?
Look, there is a process. There is a dialogue ongoing in the party.
No, because we've seen the Board of Trustees chairman go around.
It is unending.
And then there's said to be a report which is meant to be deliberated over.
It is unending. In politics, we don't give up until the very last minute. So it is unending. I know he and his team are still being spoken to. And in all of this, really, many of those people in that team are still campaigning for the party. Except that Governor Wike said that because he's not been spoken to on this matter, they removed the picture of Atiku and the national chairman from.
Oh, so you said people in his camp are campaigning for your presidential candidate. People like who?
Huh?
You said people with him are still campaigning.
I didn't say the president. I said they are still campaigning for the party.
For the party?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
For instance, some of these other governors that are in his team, some of them are contesting to be senators. The election of the senator and the president comes up in the same day. When they campaign, will they say, vote for me as a person and don't vote for the candidate of the party?
I guess we'll have to wait to see that.
It's a risk.
I guess we'll have to wait today. Let's quickly go to Abuja to introduce our other guest. Chamberlain?
Agbero Byron, who is the Director of Operations, Obi Dati Campaign Organization. Good morning and thank you for coming on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you for having me.
You have been a former presidential aspirant, candidate yourself for Kowa Party,
yes,
and you've gone through all the rigors. You know what this entails to be a president and or to contest for that office. And you put in a lot from the get-go. But there are many who think that they don't quite see that the Labour Party candidate set out to achieve that. Some think it was a fallout of what transpired in the PDP, and that's how his position came through.
Well, the people who say that seem to be a bit short of memory. You would recall that sometime in July last year, the Southern governors came down to say that the presidency must be zoned to the South. Peter Obi was in the PDP at that time, and the expectation was that the presidency in the PDP will be zoned to the South. And if the presidency were to be zoned to the South, a number of us true federalists, people who thoroughly believe in federalism, do not believe it's just north-south. Because if you strictly zone the presidency to the north and to the south, forever, you will either get a Fulani man, Hausa Fulani man, or a Yoruba man. If it is strictly north and south, you permanently exclude the middle belt, you permanently exclude the southern minorities. So the only realistic way, and this is the difference between those who believe in restructuring truly and who believe in federalism, is the disaggregation of this country along the 6 geopolitical zones. And if you do that analysis, you will see that if the presidency should be zoned to the south, it should be zoned to the southeast. And this is why Afenifere were very, very clear and unambiguous when they said, look, for Nigeria to move to the next step, the first step we must take must be the step of justice and inclusion. The step of social justice and inclusion. Justice must be done to all Nigerians. Sorry, just to chip in something. Democracy is not government of the majority by the majority for the majority. It's government of the people by the people for the people, which includes minorities, includes small groups. It's all about inclusion. And so Obi wanted to be president from the outset. He had that mind, he had the framework, he had the capacity. And so all the stories that it was an aftermath of Atiku is just, Atiku himself said that he expected, the only reason why he entered that race was because it was not zoned to the southeast specifically. And that after the southeast, it is the northeast that is most disenfranchised from the central position of power since 1999.
But, you know, one of the things that your candidate, the candidate of the Labour Party, has talked about is that nobody should vote for him based on ethnic considerations.
That is true, which means, it simply means that don't vote for me because I'm an Igbo man. Vote for me because I'm competent. He didn't say that there's no agreement that you shouldn't vote for him or that the zoning shouldn't come to him.
Yeah, but wouldn't that also mean do not vote for me because it is the turn of the southeast?
Well, it is a question of semantic and how you place it. There are different categories. There are different steps to achieving. Number one, in the first place, somebody who is under 18 cannot vote for the president. So that's one level of qualifier. There are further levels of qualifier. You must have your school cert. That's another level of qualifier. There must be other levels of qualifier. Now, because Nigeria needs to be politically savvy and politically sensitive and inclusive, you see, our problems, right, are not unconnected with bad leadership, not unconnected with a governance deficiency that has the lack of inclusion in all our mix. So when we cross, you see, zoning to the southeast is first crossing the benchmark of inclusion. And then after that, then we will look at, it's like saying you want to zone. Yes, you will want to zone, but even after you zone, you look at merit. So we are not saying zone for zoning's sake. We are saying zoning, and Peter Obi has said, look, beyond that, look, any Easterner could have come out, but any Easterner would not have been voted for. We are saying vote for the man based on his competence. However, Nigeria should do justice to its own self. When we exclude the southeast, we are not excluding, We are not doing the Southeast a favor by excluding the Southeast. We are doing ourselves a favor by excluding certain people.
But we've had people who, till tomorrow, they keep saying, look, they're struggling to see his path to victory. Yes. They talk about the dominant political parties who've been in the trenches for a while. If you look at the candidates of the APC and the PDP, you've seen how they've been angling for this particular seat, this position for a very, very long time. Yes. So they must have gathered a lot of momentum, the critical mass, and perhaps the wherewithal. It could be contentious, but they still wonder, where is his path to victory?
Yes, many people wonder where this movement is coming from.
Where
the organic movement is coming from. I'll tell you something, right? I give it to credit to the APC, to the PDP. APC itself, when was it formed? When did it become? When did it get into power? When was it formed? AC and CPC joined together in 2013, 2014. They got into the power in 2015. So that is just...
No, is it just about when it was formed or the foothold that they have in different parts of the country, how they can generate the vote? They can tell you the calculations and how it can come, but can the same thing be said of the Labour Party?
It does not work mathematically like that all the time. What we have now is a movement of people, a movement of Nigerians, of which Peter Obi only symbolizes. He symbolizes it by his character, by his competence, by his capability, right? It's a fulcrum. A number of us tried to do it in 2019 when we knew where Nigeria was going to and we won, and out of frustration, a number of us decided we must contest and show that something needs to be done.
But you also saw while you contested that you needed to have a foothold to win elections.
Absolutely, because it was probably not our time. I think the fruit had not been matured. But there's a difference between a political party and a political movement. And this is where people come and say structures or no structures.
What is the difference?
Movements don't have structures. If it is a true movement, it is organic. The structure will emerge later on. The structure will come out of the movement. And this is precisely what is happening. And if people don't say that, this race is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Our own, when we ran, we finished our primaries in November. We were asked to jump and start voting in February. We weren't even given time to raise funds. We weren't even given time to be recognized.
And speaking about funds,
yes, please.
I mean, not just in this country, but globally, you know that to run a campaign, an election, that you need a deep pocket.
Yes, you need a pocket.
Does your candidate, does your party have that deep pocket to prosecute this campaign?
We have a pocket that is deep enough. But what you should find out is, you see, there is difference between spending money on election and having value for money for what you spend. If you know our principle
that's relative for political parties, I guess.
Well,
in terms of
it is relative for political parties, but political parties that behave in a certain way cannot behave differently when they get into government. When you spend money anyhow, as a political party to run, when you buy votes, when you have to depend on how much you spend and how much you blow and how much you bribe and how much you spill over to people, when you are running for president, it is easy to know how you will run government when you get there. It is very easy. And consistently, I have been in politics for over 40 years in this country. And I know what it is. It is systematic, it is predictable. You will predict. Apart from that, I'm a governance specialist. I'm a development specialist. We work on data. A person who has to bribe 5,000 naira to 10,000 naira to get people to vote will never ever pray that the value of that human being that he has to give 5,000 naira, he will never pray that that person is worth more than the 5,000 naira he gives him. So tell me, how will he perform or how will he deliver governance in such a way that the life of that person will be improved? It is not possible. So if Nigerians won't let them continue to believe in these people who throw money around as if, as a matter of fact, the money you're throwing around, what's the worth and what's the value today? But they believe in throwing money around, but they don't believe in the value of the Nigerian life. For as long as we do not believe that it is human development, it is the value of the Nigerian life that matters, right? The value of your naira will go slow down as what is done. So for us, that is not our style. We are going to change that style. And Nigerians better know that that style had better be buried and dead. Otherwise, Nigeria will not get out of the doldrums. So when the time for money, spending money will come, we will spend the money.
Hasn't it come already?
you spend gradually, and you know what you want to spend for. You don't just throw money around.
I'm just a little curious. So in 2019, you were a presidential candidate, and you ran against the president, the sitting president. You know, also in that race were VP Atiku Abubakar and Governor Peter Obi, who were both candidate and running mate. At that time, you didn't see his potential?
At that time, I saw the potential of many people.
Okay.
But I also saw the contraption in which they wanted to carry the nation. You see, the candidate is one thing, the vehicle is another.
Okay.
Look at the PDP. I was in the PDP 22 years ago. I contested local government chairmanship in Lagos. PDP is a party that never listens, neither do they ever learn. And I knew that no matter what, check out what Donald Duke said about the, you know, he said even him, if he were in the PDP, it would be impossible for him to do anything right. Because the structure is constraining. The same with APC. Can you extricate Asiwaju, my senior brother, Bola Tinubu, from the APC?
So let me get this straight. Assuming that Governor Peter Obi had emerged the candidate of the PDP, you wouldn't have supported him on the platform of the PDP? For these primaries, for these elections, for the 2023
it probably
elections.
would have been, you see, what we do is that nothing is good or bad except by a comparison. You go with what you have. If there were somebody else that had the possibility, you see, I know a bit about Peter Obi in the sense that I was head of DFID South, including Enugu, especially during the period from Peter Obi's transition to Ubienu's transition. I conducted Ubienu's first ex-school retreat as head of DFID. So we had known at that time about Peter Obi's capacity to reduce cost of governance, his focus on education and health, which are the key factors for human development. So I've always had no problem with Peter Obi.
Okay, so, but assuming he had emerged on the platform of the PDP...
If he had emerged on the platform of the PDP... if he had emerged on the platform of the PDP this time around, and there was no other person, absolutely I would have supported him 100%.
So let me get this straight now.
But because there was no other, I mean, you go with the... don't forget I said you go with the vehicle that is available.
Okay. Right now you're wearing the pin of the Labour Party.
I am a member of the Labour Party. Proudly so.
Okay.
The vehicle available.
That is the vehicle. That is the vehicle under formation that is available, that is listening to the people, that is moving with the movement, that the youth have accepted, that is giving people space.
Do you think that it will be important? I mean, having been a member of COA, do you think that it will be important for all the other parties, well, the not so big parties, I'm very careful in classifying them now, to partner with the parties that they think could eventually, you know, produce candidates whom they think stand a chance in the elections?
Marco, you're absolutely right. They actually should. They should. But the process is this. Parties either learn or refuse to learn from the mistakes they make. What I get is that a lot of parties, when they have issues, they complain, they go through crises, but as soon as they get into power, they forget all the issues that have been doing them, and they never learn and never restructure, or never have a... COA party had its own issues. Unfortunately, INEC has erased us from recording. There are other parties too. There's something called strategic alliances. When a party demonstrates that, look, it has certain things. It's not about one party or the other. It's about Nigeria and how we deliver good governance to Nigerians.
Well, you have said PDP doesn't learn.
The PDP has not demonstrated that they learn or listen, or otherwise they would not be having this kind of crisis they're having now.
All right, let's go to Lagos. Our colleagues have got questions for you.
Well, I think the question has asked itself. So let's allow Mr. Fadaka respond to that, saying that the APC does not, rather the PDP does not listen, does not learn, and he believes that is... By the way, he was in the PDP, so perhaps he's speaking from a place of experience, really. So.
Well, I don't know whatever experience he had in the PDP. And to say that the party does not learn is not true. When I was speaking moments ago, I told you that our constitution at the time was in a format and that there's a change. Something informed that change. You see, a political party is endemic. That is to say, it must reinvent and redevelop itself from time to time. So I don't know what my dear brother Fagbenro is saying there. I mean, does he even think he's in a political party? I don't think so.
How do you mean?
I don't
He's
think
in a Labour Party. That's a political party.
Look, parties that are political parties that are preparing for this election, they have candidates for every position out there.
Is that your definition of what a party is, or INEC's definition?
In fact, I will even give you the theoretical definition of what a political party is.
No, in the context of the framework, the Electoral Act, the Constitution, the definitions are clear.
Okay, well, as far as I care, as far as I know, what is a political party goes beyond the name the party claims it bears. It is a very, very big structure that must flow, to borrow Buhari's curious quotation, top to bottom. You know, to borrow that one. A party must flow from the very top down there. Does Labour Party have anything anywhere else? Labour Party came into prominence when my Oga and friend, Dr. Mimiko, used it to become governor. And since then, it has become a party that when people feel that they have to prove a point politically, they take, they use, and they dump thereafter.
You see that happening again?
Well, I know, for me, the Labour Party is coming into this election
Labour Party is
as a kind of, what do I call it now? It's coming into this election just to have fun. It's not going to make any effect. I can be that conclusive immediately, even before the election.
I think it's fair to take this back to him to get his response. Mr. Fagbero Byron, I mean, this is the opinion of Mr. Fadaka here. He thinks that, first, your party doesn't have that structure from top to bottom, in his words. And he says that essentially this is a use and dump mechanism. And I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, it's rather ridiculous that Mr. Fadaka should talk about Labour Party as use as dump when his principal, the presidential candidate of PDP, has been dumping and using PDP itself and APC. Between APC and PDP, they've been dumping and using themselves, and there has been a fluent interchange of membership of both parties. So both of them see themselves. So he shouldn't insinuate that with Labour Party. Labour Party is an emerging party. The second thing he said was about top to bottom. It must flow from top to bottom. Mr. Fadaka should realize that these days things move from bottom up. And the movement, and that is where you have development. Development has to move from bottom up. The fluency of it has to be from bottom up. Now, you know, yes, it is true that Labour Party has only about 40% in terms of those contesting for positions. And it's because we quite agree, yes, Labour Party is a young party, it's emerging.
It's no longer young.
Without a doubt, Peter Obi has put in a lot of oomph behind Labour Party. However, the conduct of Labour Party over time is indicative of the fact that it is a party that is probably most aligned with ideology than any other party because it's strict on a social democratic ideology, if you know what I mean. So, you know, the fact that this whole idea or the concept that my brother, Mr. Fadaka, is trying to push is the concept that tries to promote that, look, they are young, they can never grow. You know, it always has to be, you don't give emerging, you know, thoughts and alternative ideas, you know, a chance. But truth be told, I think we should just discountenance the fact of using and dumping. I mean, if we know who the politicians who have been using and dumping each other are, certainly not in Labour.
Just quickly, I recall you've spoken about...
And not of Labour.
Right. You've spoken about your friendship with Governor Sanwo-Olu. I recall at that point where he dropped the Your Excellency tag. You actually wrote about it saying that is your kind of guy, collaborator in Lagos development and friend for over 10 years. That was in 2019, so perhaps it's friend for over 12 years now. And, I mean, you're in the Labour Party now. He's in the APC, vying for re-election. Do you still hold that support, that friendship with Governor Sanwo-Olu, as you said then?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think Sanwo-Olu is a great guy. I think he's a great human being. It doesn't mean the fact that he's in APC does not mean that. You know, we have friends in PDP, we have friends in... Donald Duke is my very good friend. We have friends all over the place. You see, what we're trying to say is that we have to disassociate personality, personal interests from what is good for the Nigerian citizens. Everything I said about Sanwo-Olu is true. We also have a Labour Party gubernatorial candidate in the person of Gbadebo Rhodes Vival, who is excellent, is an excellent human being as well, you know. And I feel the same way with him, you know. So it's not, we should learn that, you see, if I don't belong to your party, doesn't mean I won't tell you the truth about Labour. I invested, I can say I invested close to 8 years of my professional life working on Lagos development, working on Southwest development, working on development of the southern eastern states. You know, so I know, you know, Sanwo-Olu, Fashola, Ambode, any of them, if you know them personally, you can ask them that what role Shina Fagbero played in the development or contributing to. And we give them credit for that.
Let me just ask Mr. Fadaka.
Yes.
Pardon me. Mr. Fadaka, just thinking about how you started out and then the developments within your party from Rivers, as much as you may say that, look, this is all politics and that they know how to sort themselves out, but at the moment, for those who will be voting, there's a lot of uncertainty for your party. And so don't you think that at the end of the day, these kind of uncertainties will definitely come back and bite your party? Because rather than being definitive, everybody knows where they're headed. If it's this uncertain and confusing, it plays into the hands of the ruling party.
Well, I must say that a political party goes beyond a single individual. In Rivers State, we indeed have a party that thrives. Today, truly, it might be the voice of Governor Wike that everybody is hearing about the party in Rivers State, but it does not in any way mean that we don't have other party leaders in Rivers State that are working very, very seriously for the party. So to that extent, our party is preparing...
Yeah, but Mr. Fadaka, I mean, I know you know better than I do because, I mean, it is your party and you know that when you say it's about a single individual, wouldn't that be tantamount to not giving people the true picture? Because you know that if he's in control of the levers of power in the state, he will utilize it to the best of whichever party interest he wants. He will have supporters. He will have interests across board, across political divide, across the country, as a matter of fact. And those kind of loyalties will count for something on election day. Are we wrong in saying that?
Well, I agree with you, but as we go into elections, loyalties sometimes shift. When a governor is stepping out of power, the kind of control, the kind of leverage that he has sometimes begins to wane. I'm not saying that is going to happen in this election, but I know and I believe that Governor Wike still remains a member of this party, and between now and the election is still a very long time. So certainly, I am sure that things will turn around. The story will be different before we get into that election.
All right.
Yeah. If I'm reading that correctly, you still believe that this relationship can be repaired?
Yes. Yes. I so much believe so. You see, when I began this interview, I said that the party always has a mechanism that solves this kind of matter. It is still work in progress. That mechanism has not been put to rest. I am sure that in the days to still come, this matter will still be taken absolutely good care of. And
yeah, pardon me. You said that all parties must give and take. I recall you said that in one of your tweets.
I said so.
All parties must give and take. So What would you say that this, the leadership of your party should give and maybe take for Governor Wike, give and take? Because I imagine that you want a resolution as well as others.
Yes, I do. But what you saw in my tweet is my personal opinion.
Yes, so let's explain it to us. So what should be given and taken on what parts?
When Atiku Abubakar came to Ibadan, and Governor Makinde said, this is our position, which is why I made that tweet. Atiku Abubakar retorted by saying that, well, there is a concern of the party, there is so much, there's a tapestry that these issues must pass through. And I just feel that, do we really need to take the party along that path? That in this matter, we must, in the interest of peace within the party, that we must give and take.
So
we
what
must
should
not
the
have
leadership,
a physician.
Right. What should the leadership give in this case?
Well, it is what I think the leadership should do is to bring those that are aggrieved around again for another heart-to-heart discussion, and I am sure that the resolution will come from that place.
Well, I think it's a fine place to leave it. Clearly, the coming days will be very, very interesting, within your party.
So many questions to ask you, but
but above all, if I can just leave with this parting shot, Nigeria is in a very, very terrible situation now. Right. And we are preparing for the next election. And we only ask Nigerians to please know and realize that the office of the president is indeed an office and not a hospice.
Well, Mr. Ayo Fadaka, former zonal publicist and secretary of the People's Democratic Party, thank you so much for your time on the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's to Abuja now to wind down.
All right. Yes, thank you, Mr. Byron. So what do you think moving forward? I know you say you're optimistic, but...
Well, moving forward, I will just urge Nigerians to be as peaceful as possible in the next election, and for us to really consider there are over 20 million children out of school. We have security threats. We have threats that are external, occasioned on things like climate change. We have issues concerning our economy. And therefore, we should actually be more concerned about the capacity and the competence of the people we should put in power. It's not personal. By not supporting somebody does not mean it does not mean you hate the person.
All right.
We should learn to love Nigeria as much, and we should pray that everything goes well, with all of us.
All right, then, a fine place to leave it with that prayer. Mr. Shina Fagbero Byron is Director of Operations for the Obi Dati Campaign Organization, the Labour Party. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, then. So, do we have any feedback coming through,
None that I can see for now.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today, then. We thank you all for watching. As always, we will see you again tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so have a very good day.
Thank you. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
It's just Tuesday. It feels like Friday. But 4 more days to go. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, and don't forget, Nigeria is yours. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.